Welcome back to the Growing Together podcast with me, Sonny Vasquez.
And me, Cesar Santos.
A podcast where we talk about everything under the sun related to growth and becoming the very best version of yourself. And today we are back with another episode, one that I feel is quite contradicting to this podcast.
I'm excited to hear the topic.
The concept of this podcast. But before we get into it, how was your week, Cesar?
It's been pretty good. The only thing sad I would say that happened this past week or maybe 2 weeks is the fact that our headphones have both been chewed up by our dog. So we are not wearing headphones right now.
You know, it's probably better because I feel like some people don't wear headphones when they podcast anyway.
That's true, yeah, they don't.
But yeah, she's going through a headphone phase. She ate and swallowed Cesar's
earphones,
little
tiny ones.
The wired earphones, which we later saw in her poop and vomit. So
she
for mine, she just tore them apart. And granted, our headphones weren't very expensive anyway, so I wasn't that mad because it was my fault. I left them within her reach, and we kind of know with having a puppy that anything left in her reach is fair game because she's going through that chewing phase. But yeah, I was like, well, what can you do? There's that episode of when you're trying to punish your dog and you put them in the kennel. And there's an episode of SpongeBob where they're like, okay, they put him in jail and 2 seconds later, okay, time to go. So I feel like that's how I punish her. It's I get so mad, but then I'm like, oh, she's so cute. We can't punish her.
You have to in regards to obviously putting her in the kennel. She's learning though. I think she's realizing more and more oh, I can't eat this or I can't.
She's a good dog. Despite some of the habits, it's not unnormal for dogs to do that. So I feel like we've gone through what normal pet parents do. Ironically, it's Mother's Day.
Yes, today is actual Mother's Day.
I am a mother.
Actual Mother's Day. Yesterday was
actual Mother's Day.
Yesterday was Dog Mom's Mother's Day. So
and Cesar didn't get me anything. So,
anyways,
but today, So today, the topic, and by the title you can see, is why self-improvement is ruining your life. And I think it's obviously very contradicting with our podcast. Our whole podcast is about growth and improving yourself and, not just becoming a better person, personally, but growing as a professional. There's so many different areas of your life you can grow in. So I feel that we try to encompass all of that on this podcast. But self-improvement is obviously something that gets brought up a lot within the conversations that we have. And so I had saw this kind of idea and definitely wanted to discuss it because I think there is this dark side to self-improvement that we don't talk about. So
I'm curious.
what are your thoughts hearing that? You don't know anything about where this is going to go?
I have a feeling I know where this is going to go, but I want to hear you out. I want to hear this whole topic out. I have no idea.
Yeah, so we kind of start with the idea of the self-improvement industry. So what do you think of when you hear self-improvement industry? What's the first thing that comes to mind?
What do you mean? on the internet, or are you referring to
so when I think self-improvement, I think books.
Oh,
I think
books.
Tony Robbins. I think Rachel Hollis. I think all of those gurus,
quote unquote gurus, claimed gurus, or maybe some people have just called them gurus for because they were helped. I mean, that is the first thing that comes to mind. Certain individuals come to mind, Jordan Peterson, or like you said, Tony Robbins. I know Rachel Hollis was one that was had her books all over Target and stuff like that. And you have financial self-help gurus, and there's that in whole industry of how to better manage your finances, and they help you
well, I'm taking more in sense of self-help general, how to be a better person, those books The Classic Art of Not Giving a Tony
I've heard
Robbins,
those books,
or Rachel Hollis, Go Wash Your Face, or all of that. So that's kind of where my mind goes when you think about the self-improvement industry. And what I think about is it for one, that it's an industry. It's an industry with if you look at market research, it's worth about $11.3 billion industry. But this whole industry relies on people having people that are down, and the idea is that it preys on people like that. I can't even think of the word. It preys on people that are in this space in not a great headspace to like rely on others to tell them what's going to change their life, you know?
I feel like there's other industries that are this way where there has to be some sort of some sort of help that someone needs. So like obviously there's self-help, there's mental health, there's all kinds of different industries that need somebody.
But that's what I'm saying. But I'm saying in reference to it, it preys on people who are like usually like insecure, down in the dumps, like not feeling great about themselves. Whereas like other industries where like, for instance, like, you talk about like financial self-help, like financial gurus. Those prey on people that like maybe actually that could actually be a bad idea because those could prey on people that potentially
no, that's
need,
what I'm
like,
saying. There's all those other industries where it's
but like I get that there's other
it.
industries, but I'm specifically talking about this one today.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I know. Yeah.
So like, I think that's like kind of, I never really thought about it like that until I was doing research for this podcast, and I was like, you know what? That's true. It relies on kind of people feeling down about themselves, or like they're in a rut, or that their life sucks. And that kind of sucks in itself. There's this constant message that like you need to better yourself. And that message alone isn't a negative message. Like we all will always have areas for improvement. But there's this kind of, the way these books or like these gurus often sell it is that if you do this, you'll get to where you feel like you've improved and you're done. But with self-help, there's really no end to it. You get what I mean? Like, you're always going to need to improve. Therefore, like, these gurus kind of benefit off the fact that, like, they're going to tell you one thing, but it's not going to fix all the issues that you have, because that's nearly impossible. But they preach this, like, future and these dreams that, like...
Do you have some examples of this? Because I'm curious. I know I've come across some that would probably fit that narrative that you're talking about, where it's like, yeah, you have to, like, buy into the system in order for you to hit the next level and things of that nature. But I know there's other good either gurus or people in the same industry that don't really necessarily do that. They just offer more help if you need it, but it's not like they're the ones saying you have to do this in order to get to the next level.
Yeah,
you know?
So I have this like written down right here. So according, this was from betterhumans.pub. The constant, while the intentions of the self-help industry may be good, the constant message that we need to be better can create a never-ending cycle of self-criticism and self-doubt. So, like, it's almost like you're never going to be proud of yourself for the strides you made because you still have so far to go. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, like, the one thing that this article mentioned is that it's important to remember that we're already enough, and the self-improvement should come from a place of, like, self-love and not because you hate yourself. So I think a lot of like the way that these books are framed, and maybe unintentionally, I don't think, like, I would hope and give the benefit of the doubt to these authors who write these, don't want people to like hate themselves because they're not like as great as, like, they don't have as great as routine as like in the book, but like it shouldn't come from a place of like self-loathing basically. And so as, like, it's kind of ironic because it also mentions in this article that as happiness drops in America, the amount of money people will spend on trying to be happy is obviously going to increase, and often the times they're spending it on those books like self-help or like seminars and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I've been to plenty of those too as well.
You've been to some of those?
I've been to a couple of those seminars. Yeah, they're pretty cool, honestly. I've been to 2 or 3 of them actually, but I would say, and I would argue and say that a lot of them, obviously there is a financial benefit of obviously holding these events and having these speakers come out and speak to you about new ideas and how to improve not only your life but like financially, maybe your business, and it's a win-win for everyone. Obviously, no one's forcing you to go because you have to pay the money to go.
But that's the thing; it's not always a win-win for everyone, because like you go to a seminar, like, but like. The whole kind of, I guess, like, another argument made, and, like, what we'll talk about, too, is these gurus kind of put a one-size-fits-all solution. And that doesn't really work in like self-help because everyone's situation is different.
Yeah, I mean,
so like if you go to a seminar and you're like, why isn't any of this advice working for me? Well, it's because it can't work for everyone. It's not possible that it can work for everyone.
I mean, out of all the seminars I've ever been to, there's never been one where they said this will work for you. It's guaranteed to work.
Well, I'm not saying it's guaranteed to work. I don't think any of them say it's guaranteed to work, but they do. Often you hear like, I did it so you can do it too.
Yeah, it's like what do you call it? It's like a case study. Like they're building up like how they usually start off like.
But that's the thing. But just because someone else does it does not mean
of course
you can do it too.
Yeah,
like
but it's a case
can
study,
build a computer. I can't. Like that's just I just don't have that same capability, and I might never. Or like you like are a great video editor, and I might be able to get good at it one day, but I will never be to the level you are because some people are stronger in other areas than others. So I think the whole thing is that that a lot of them do kind of preach, maybe not say this is guaranteed work, but they kind of give you the idea, well, because this worked for me, it should work for you, which it's not always going to work for you. So, like, it can leave people being like, well, I did everything they said, so, like, why isn't it working?
Isn't this working? Yeah, no,
so I think that's kind of, like, where some of these articles go.
Well, that same concept there that you're talking about, you can literally fit that in any other industry. Like, hey, like, this is how I became a millionaire in 10 years or whatever, and, like, they lay out the game plan or whatever the case is. And for some, it might not work, and then they get mad, and obviously they sometimes even potentially sue the person who said, hey, you guaranteed. That's which is why a lot of people don't say, I guarantee this will work for you, because there's a lot of liability there in any space.
But if you think about it, like these self-help gurus like live off the fact that they do say things that like maybe not directly are claims, but are claims that it should work, So like that's kind of where I'm. You seem to really be arguing in favor of these.
I'm
just like.
I'm just saying.
Cesar's pro guru.
No, I'm not pro guru. I'm not pro guru. I'm pro. I'm pro
making your life better.
No, I'm pro that there's solutions out there for people to make their lives better.
But that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying that there's not solutions for those people out there where it doesn't work, but I'm saying that like these like books are often like marketed as like a one-size-fits-all solution, and they're not.
And I understand. Again, I've seen those books at Barnes & Noble and from the randomest authors that I never heard of. Again, they're like I've seen a few of them whenever we like walked around the bookstore. But from the ones that I've personally read, it's never like that. It's just like giving you like information and guidance, and it's up to you as the reader, or if you're listening to it in an audiobook, to actually take the initiative to better help yourself. And there's even services that do that. Hey, like BetterHelp.com. Obviously it isn't sponsored by them, but there's companies.
It's a therapy. That's not like a
self-improvement. But they're also quote unquote preying on people who need help. If you think about it, in the same way that you're talking about it to me, there has to be people that... I think that
for one, I'm not for BetterHelp because I'm convinced there's going to be a documentary one day about them because I have yet to hear a story, like, besides, like, ones that they probably pay people to do, like, yeah, I've used BetterHelp and it's great. Like, I don't think that the people that they hire actually have, like, the serious struggles. Those
types of services either will exist either in the private or even in the public. In the public sector, obviously, there's certain services that you can go to, depending on the state you live in. But in the same way that there are gurus, again, that I do understand that will like sell you on this, like if you do exactly what I'm saying, you do. If you do exactly what I'm telling you to do, you will be X, Y, Z.
But what I'm saying is like they don't even have to say that for it not to be a great thing. What I'm saying is that like, okay, I read a book and it tells me like the key is like routine. So I create like this rigid routine, right? And I'm like, okay, I get up at 4. A lot of them like getting up early is super beneficial, right? Get up at 4, I work out, and I do this, but like say nothing changes. And it's not to say that the advice isn't good. Like it's probably great to wake up early. It's probably great to work out, but that's maybe not what you needed for your specific problem. So that's what I'm saying is like it's not that their advice is bad at all because it's probably good advice. And I've also I've read these books. I am an avid self-help
I was actually going to say, you have so many self-help books.
Because, but that's what I'm saying is like after reading some of them too, you realize that like you almost have to take it with a grain of salt, and like you have to be a little bit self-aware of what you need when you're reading those books and understand that it's not the end all be all. And I think that's the problem with this industry too, is that like people that need help often don't have that like self-understanding of like they're just lost. They don't know what to do, and they feel like this is the next best step. This person turned like their life from like did a 180. But then like you also don't consider that like this person who turned their life around also came from a different, like very different situation, so that like has some impact as well. But I know that you've heard of this book. You've heard of the book, The Art of Not Giving a Fuck, right? So
yeah, I remember seeing it was like a bestseller on Amazon.
Yeah, the author of that book, his name is Mark Manson, and he wrote The Problems with the Self-Help Industry. He literally has like a blog where it lists the problems of the self-help industry, and it says self-help reinforces perceptions of inferiority and shame. Self-help is yet another form of avoidance, like actually avoiding the actual problems you have. Self-help marketing creates unrealistic expectations. Self-help is usually not scientifically validated. And self-help is like a contradiction, because again, like you're constantly trying to think that like you're constantly trying to feel like get to this end goal where like improvement, like it's gonna be it's a long game, right? You know, you're not gonna like be like, oh, I'm the perfect person at the end of your life. That's just not it's not reasonable. But it kind of preaches that like at one day you'll feel peace. So when you don't feel that peace, like you're wondering like, what am I doing wrong? Have you ever heard of what they call the self-help paradox?
Nope, and this is the first time I'm hearing this.
It's actually the first time I've heard of it too, because when I was reading about this, I was like, interesting. So there's a paradox with self-improvement, and it is this. The ultimate goal of all self-improvement is to reach the point where you no longer feel the need to improve yourself. So self-improvement is therefore, in a weird way, ultimately self-defeating.
That's interesting. That's an interesting take.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm pretty sure that was from like Mark Manson himself too. Was it Manson? Sorry. Yeah, Mark Manson. I was like, wait, I thought of that serial killer for a minute.
Oh,
I was like, that's not him. No. So I think I've never really thought about that, because it's actually true. Is like we're always longing for like this more improved version of ourselves, but we're always going to need to improve.
Is there like a plateau? You know, is there a ceiling that you hit, right? And there can be for some people. You know, that a lot of you can take this in like the athletic realm, where people want to hit a certain like mile time or some sort of, they want to set a certain personal record for themselves. Like everyone has personal records.
But that'll be a ceiling. There will always be like type of ceiling. Like you may have like this goal of like, say you want to run a 4-minute mile. You may reach that, but the idea of you reaching anything other than the 4-minute mile is like slimmer and slimmer. Whereas like with self-help, like an improvement, it's more abstract, where like you constantly can improve yourself because there's so many different areas you can improve in. Mm-hmm. Like the idea, for instance, even the idea of like being able to run a 4-minute mile is a form of improvement in an area of your life.
Yeah.
But like that's a very like concrete thing of like the humans are only capable of so much. So to be like, oh, well, I've run like the fastest runner in the world. They've won. They're already faster than everyone. What else is there to do?
Well, for the longest period of time, I think it was like 10 or 20 years, people were trying to run the 4-minute mile. And it wasn't until one person finally did it that a bunch of people then started breaking that barrier.
Well, because they didn't know it was possible.
Yeah,
no one had done it.
Exactly.
When someone else has done it, it's also contradicting. When someone else has done it, it does give you that proof that it can be done.
But that's what I'm talking about.
When no one else has done it.
That's what I'm talking about. There's nuances to it.
No, exactly.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, is that not all self-help is bad.
I'm not saying all self-help is bad, but the industry in itself, it does have its flaws. Yeah. And that like the irony of like conversation, just because someone else can do it doesn't mean that you can. Like, I know that I probably will never run a 4-minute mile, even though I know other people have done it.
I also think that I probably won't ever run a 4-minute mile, but I would try to see how fast I can run.
No, exactly.
Like maybe
but
5 or 6.
But I'm not gonna hate on myself because I can't, because that's not a realistic expectation for myself. And so that's what I want to get into, is like sometimes the expectations set in those books are not realistic expectations for your situation.
Yeah.
Like the expectation, for instance, right now, like we're about to run a marathon in October.
Yeah.
But to say like I'm gonna run an ultra marathon this year, not gonna happen.
Yeah.
It's not a realistic expectation for me. It's also not like, for instance, like a lot of self-help books will say like routine is like key. But like say you have a job where like your schedule is just so not controlled by you, like there's only so much control you have in creating that routine. So like the expectations set forward in those books sometimes just aren't reasonable for you too. So you have to set those expectations for yourself and knowing like what's possible and what's not. And I think that's like kind of a hard line to tread, because we're going to make excuses for ourselves. So setting goals can be hard for some people because you're going to make excuses as to like why you didn't do it or why you didn't hold yourself accountable. But it's really up to you when you're utilizing these resources, because there are really great self-help resources out there to take what is going to help you and just get rid of what's not going to help you, what's not reasonable for you. It's also like the most recent one I read was about forgiveness. It was Forgiving What You Can't Forget. And I thought that was a really valuable book for me. But I also think about like if I had read that book a year ago, it wouldn't have done anything for me because I was in such a painful, dark place that I wouldn't have listened to anything it said. It wouldn't have been helpful. So it also depends like that mindset that you're in, of how valuable those kind of resources are going to be for you, because you're not, there's so many different factors that can affect like how you take it and how you're receptive and whether it's even worth it to, the whole like self-help paradox is that like we ideally in like, not even ideally, we always should be growing. We always should be improving. So we're never done improving. So if you get addicted to the idea that there's an end zone, like there's a place where you're done, there just never is. You're never done with self-help. And that's also kind of what it feeds off of, is that people are never done. And oftentimes one of the things that came up a lot when I was reading about like the dark side of self-help was that oftentimes like there's motivational videos, right? They're great. It's like get up early, like, you know, they make you feel good for that like 1 second, and you're motivated for like maybe the day or the next couple of days. But a lot of times they don't provide actionable steps, you know, of like what you should actually do. It's just a bunch of mumbo jumbo, and like, and it's just like, it's great like to be someone who can motivate someone else, but it's also great to be that person who can motivate someone else and also provide like an actual game plan that will help them.
Yeah, strategy. What depending on obviously what they're trying to do. If it's something to do with like athleticism or the gym, or maybe it's becoming a better speaker or whatever the case is. Obviously, there's like certain things that you should do to hit that goal that you have or whatever the case is. So I mean, I do think that I haven't read a self-help book that didn't provide actionable steps that you can take or that you should take. All the ones that I've read are, they break down certain key habits and things that you may or may not be doing, and slowly help you in like realizing like this is what you can do or should do in order to like turn your life around. It was never like if you do this it's going to help you. It's always like just self-evaluating yourself. Same with that book that you probably read, right? It kind of got you to understand from that author's perspective on forgiving what you can't forgive, right?
It's forgiving what you can't forget.
Sorry, forgiving what you can't forget. So, right? That author took you through some sort of journey to like realizing, oh, I can forgive what I can't. Wait, I can forgive what I can't forget.
Yeah.
Huh? Yeah. So, sorry.
I mean, what was the last self-help book you read?
It's on the shelf, I think. It's a couple of years ago. I'm pretty sure it was like 12 Rules for Life, or there's another one. There's like one or two on the shelf. It's been that long since I've read one. So.
Why? Because you felt like you were fixed?
No, I just No, I didn't think that. No, I didn't. No, it's just more of again, like there's certain things that those books prescribe you to do or tell you like that can help you out, but you have to actually put in the work. Not reading a book isn't going to change your life unless you put the work in.
Yeah.
You can read all the books in the world and tell you exactly what you need to do, and then you don't actually put any of that into practice. It's never gonna help you. Same with the people who I would say probably the Bible is probably one of the most read books in the history of humanity, and there's so many lessons that you can learn from it, and there's so many things that you can put into practice from that same book. Or obviously one of the many books in the Bible, and until you actually put those thoughts or ideas into practice, you're never going to change your life. So, same with.
Would you say that those books, though, like any book, like any self-help books, actually like tells you how to put it into practice versus just giving you the like what you should do? Like it's one thing to say like, oh, you should do this, but like it's another thing to show someone how it works in practice.
Yeah, I think it's good for people to know how it works, like you said, in practice.
I'm asking, though, do you think the books usually tell you how it works in practice?
Some do, some don't. Some either provide a story about, like, an individual and how they became who they were. There's some sort of, like, message, right? Like, underlying message that you're like, oh, so, like, that's a lesson I learned from this person's personal journey and how it can apply to my life. Or it's anecdotal evidence of certain behaviors of that you may inhibit that you can stop doing in order to improve your life.
Yeah.
So that's.
I just think it's like this reminds me of a conversation I had with my sister this week. So she has a friend that was going through a really like dark time, and like my sister was like having lunch with her and like talking to her about it, and she like brought up me because like 2 years ago I was like in a really dark, scary place, and I didn't want to talk to anyone. I didn't want to reach out to anyone, and I could barely get out of bed. And I told my sister, I was like, because her friend was like, yeah, I don't feel like reaching out to anyone. It's like, well, when you're in that kind of headspace, for one, you don't want to reach out to anyone because you won't want to feel like a burden. But when no one reaches out to you as well, it makes you feel like they don't care. You also feel as if no one will understand your situation because they haven't been through the specific situation that you've been through, so they won't understand how you feel, why you feel the way you feel, and all the emotions you're feeling. And sometimes there's a lot of shame and embarrassment about those things we're feeling and we're thinking when you're in a very dark place. And I was telling my sister that. I was like, obviously you can have empathy, but there's never going to be that person that's going to understand exactly what you're going through and like what to do about it. And I feel like that relates back to like this whole conversation that we have, is that it's just not a one size fits all approach, because you can do a case study where it has worked and it has been replicated, but just because it's replicated for one person doesn't mean it can be replicated in your life. It doesn't mean you shouldn't try. Like maybe might be worthwhile to like give it a go. But also, again, just take everything with a grain of salt. There's an article on Forbes that's titled "Psychologist Tells You Why You Need to Escape the Toxic World of Self-Help." And it says, self-help content is often oversimplified and sweetened with a false sense of hope and a meaningless pat on the back. This is why so many people feel they can relate to these books and feel happy while reading them. It's essentially toxic positivity, which we talked about on a podcast.
Yeah.
Just like the idea of like, yeah, everything's fine, everything will be great. When sometimes shit sucks, man. Like sometimes you're in between a rock and a hard place. And it's not to say that you can't get out, but it's not as simple as it is. Very simplified in these books, obviously, because I'm sure if they told like the full story, it'd be thousands of pages long.
Oh no, yeah. But, usually it's a condensed version.
But it's very simplified and like oversimplified to the point like you might not be getting as much benefit as if you were like reading like the full, story behind it all.
Yeah.
But I thought it was interesting too, like when I think of self-help and like the things that like often, I've heard and since I've like these I feel like these videos were really popular in like 2016. I feel like there was like a phase on YouTube where like self-help was skyrocketing.
Not only on YouTube, Facebook.
Yeah.
Yeah, Facebook. It was like Goalcast.
Mm-hmm.
There was there's all these. There's like these motivational like pages on Facebook that were huge.
Yeah,
Goalcast was like the biggest one.
There was this one guy. Yeah. There's this one guy, and I love his speech. I love a good motivational speech to get me started.
College speeches and stuff like that.
There's this guy. I think he was speaking out of college, and he was in the Navy. He was like, and he was like, start every day with making your bed. Mm-hmm. And it was a really good speech. Like, I still think it's a really good speech, and it's really good motivation. But like, again, you have to take it with like for what it is.
Clean your room.
Yeah,
clean your room. Yeah.
So yeah, you just gotta take it for like what it is, and you can kind of get lost in the sauce when you're watching all that like motivational stuff, because you can kind of get into like you feeling motivated, but you're not actually doing anything to help you move forward.
Yeah, no, it's like it's a part of like the algorithm, or many of the algorithms out there, depending on obviously what platform you're watching content on. Yeah. I'd even say this is probably more prominent even nowadays. Like that was huge on Facebook and YouTube.
Yeah.
And there's still like, niches of that on YouTube.
I feel like honestly it's pretty big on Instagram right now.
TikTok.
I don't get as much of that on TikTok.
You actually get the opposite, which is what's very concerning. No, I'm not even lying.
I don't want to hear you say this.
I'm just saying.
Let's just skip over that.
I'm just saying, but it's that's what I'm saying is that there's elements of it on Instagram.
I get happy stuff on my TikTok. It's just not self-help.
But there's other people that may or may not. Anyways.
It's based on what you consume. If you consume a bunch of it, obviously.
I mean, it depends. But anyways, Instagram, yes. Instagram, I have seen like motivational like reels or whatever. But there's still like a market and niche for it, like on different platforms.
But I think about like kind of what some of these like used to preach, like meditation. Like I know you used to do the whole meditation thing. When I first met you, you were really into that kind of stuff. Yeah, I remember that too. Yeah. Cold showers.
I love cold showers still. Yeah.
You take a cold shower every morning?
It's been a couple weeks since I've taken a cold shower every morning. Since we left Vegas.
So it's been a couple months then.
Yeah, months.
Like a couple weeks. Actually, so it was like we've been here a couple months.
It's been I got to get back into that because that's really helpful in the morning.
You know what's also tied to like self-help is hustle culture.
I wouldn't be surprised by that.
It is because like a lot of like the people who are preaching like, oh, to make your life better, you got to work 365 days a year.
And you just spilled it all over
myself. I got too excited about the hustle.
The hustle kicked back.
Yeah, no, but like they'll tell you like you gotta work 365. You don't want it. No one wants to work this hard. It's like no, we want to work hard, but we also want a life outside of the working end. Like it's exhausting. I feel like that kind of self-help too is just like not helping you. It's burning you.
I mean, it depends on who's like, consuming it and what their motivation is behind it. I think there's it can help people depending on obviously who they are, where they're at in their life. I personally would rather that exist out there than some other form of content telling people to do like horrible things or not do anything with their life. Like that's where it's like one of those.
What content is telling people not to do anything with their life?
You'd be surprised. Again, I don't want to get into it. That could be a whole other topic of conversation.
I'm like literally rolling my eyes because I've never consumed any content that told me not to do anything with my life.
Again, I'm not saying that you have, but it exists out there. But again, what I was getting with that is that I see the benefit again of that content existing. But
I don't think it's beneficial. Like I would argue that it's not beneficial at all because that's not creating sustainable growth.
No, I'm just saying is that like again, we don't know. I don't know who exactly consumes that sort of content. But what if someone was down in the dumps and like one or two or maybe three pieces of content like that changed their life in that moment? It's like, you know what? I have to get better, and they start taking walks. And then
but I'm not talking. That's like not hustle culture. I'm talking about hustle culture.
No, I get that.
Work like towards that. Yeah. It's different than consuming a piece of content that says take a walk. That's not harmful. But telling someone that you need to work like every day, every hour, and that's the only way to get yourself out of like a bad financial situation to like create a better life. Like that's not sustainable. Like that's what I mean. It's like hustle culture isn't what you're talking about. It's like that.
I mean, for some it might be sustainable. Well, again, I don't know.
It's not though,
but
because
for some,
like
I just don't know.
I don't think it's sustainable for anyone, no matter what they tell you.
I mean, everyone has their own personal life journey, Sonny. I mean, don't you agree? Like, you have your own personal life journey. I have my own personal life journey.
I just know that there's like a lot of people, you know, like people I've known in my life that, you know, have this hustle culture of like this is just what you do. For instance, my dad works all the time, but you know to what expense? Can you guess what expense it is?
Mm-hmm.
It's like you miss out on big events, family, things that you will never get back. And that's what they're not talking about. It's like, oh, yeah, work, it'll be great once you have, like, this fortune or this business or, you know, you've built something for yourself, but you've also missed out. I mean,
another thing, too, is building it. I mean, depending on obviously who you're talking to, is building it out for their kids and the future generation, you know. It's not just themselves. But, again, it depends. It might be for...
It might not just be for yourself, but do you know who suffers while you're doing that is your kids, your family. Mm-hmm. And, like, that's time you won't get back. Like, they may be set up, but, like, I think some people care more about, like, you know, having that time that with their family than, like, what they're... Like, if it were me, I wouldn't want to be like, oh, like, I had everything handed to me. I'd be like, no, I had a great family that I spent time with. You know, because you won't be able to get that back. You can make money later. There will always be a chance to make money.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. That is, again, I really do think it's all depends on someone's personal life journey. I can't tell someone who probably benefited from that sort of mentality of like, you know, I need to work in order for me to maybe help my parents or you know, if they have a kid or something like that. You know, I know you're not saying that at all.
You're bringing up these situations that are not what I'm talking about.
No, but I mean, that has to do
I'm talking about like hustle culture, where you're telling people out there that like the only way towards success, towards what you want, is to work every day of your life and to work 10 times harder than everyone. That's what I'm talking about.
For some, that helps.
I'm not talking about like, oh, I'm working to help my parents. Obviously, that's something you should do.
Again, but I'm saying is that's something that can come from living that life of, you know, improving yourself, like the 10X rule by Grant Cardone, right? That's actually a book I read a couple years ago. Again, it's more from the financial aspect of things, like, you know, how can you improve areas in your life and in your business by 10, because then it multiplies and like obviously adds value to everything else in your business and in your life. So there's some people that rule has helped them live a better life and become successful. Again, I personally don't know anyone who's actually, you know, succeeded with the, you know, implementing that in their life. But obviously, there's people out there that probably who consumed his content or their content or whatever the case is. But again, it's a personal journey. Everyone has their own personal life journey, and I think that there is good in all of those types of things. Like, you know, there's something that people can benefit off of and like learn and grow and grow maybe together with someone else and build a life together, you know?
I'm going back to my point. I just don't think hustle culture is beneficial to anyone.
Okay.
Like, it doesn't matter what mindset, because I think it, like, also, like, yeah, you might be at a point in your life where you can, like, I guess, waste away doing or, like, you know, in the hopes of something better, but I think that it doesn't highlight that there are other ways.
No,
like,
of course,
you know, there's always other ways to get the job done. There are so many different roads to get to the same destination. So I've always been kind of, like, for instance, like, I'm not against hard work. Like, I will always probably try to be the hardest worker in the room, or like in my job. I always try to be the best at what I do. But I often think about how, like, it's damaged me in the past, of how it's like put me out. In my last role, like, I was damn good at what I did, and like I loved what I did, but to the extent of like I really burned myself out. And if you actually look it up, I'm pretty sure healing from burnout is a long process. It doesn't happen in a year or two. It's like a whole thing. And so I often think about you know, the ROI from those actions, you know? What do you get from, like, what you're doing? You know, is it worth the investment you're putting in? And if it is, then okay. But but you also got to think of like, you know, the other things that we should have in this life, which is time with family, time to relax. I think the other thing too is that like, I think with self-help, sometimes you get like a little obsessed with it. You get a little obsessed with the idea of becoming a better person. And again, like it goes back to like, you'll never be proud of yourself because there's always going to be something else you need to do. Like you're like constantly obsessing of like, I got to do this and then this and then this. And then you're just kind of more stressed out than you are anything else.
Yeah, I mean, for some, it's that if they're able to manage it, you know, because they, again, everyone has a certain type of, I always think of it like a battery, you know. Is your battery full enough to take on that sort of like stressful environment or whatever the case is? If it isn't, obviously you're going to be drained out and you're going to get burnt out. Again, I completely understand. And certain people have the ability to have their battery or like capacity, you know, like like 1,300 milliamps, which is a lot of people don't, or maybe if you're listening to this podcast, might be a number you understand.
I don't think anyone understands that.
It's just the amount of power that you can sustain inside of a battery, and there's like 2,300 milliamps. The higher the number, the more capacity. The battery is the same size though, so like obviously depending on your application. In this case, what I'm referring to is like maybe somebody can sustain more of a workload of doing that sort of thing, like hustling and, you know, hustle or die or whatever it is,
or
right?
Maybe you're just good at running on empty.
Or people, or that too. That could be the possibility too as well.
That's the thing is like, that's what I'm saying is like, that's such a,
I mean, I don't know who they are. I don't know these
like,
people. I've never spoken to someone who lives that life of.
I mean, I felt like that. It's like I felt before like I'm running. I knew that I was running on empty, and like there's a lyric in like a Noah Kahn song, where he talks about like, I'm terrified that I might have never met me. If my engine works perfect on empty, I guess I'll drive. So like, there are people out there that I feel like sometimes you don't even acknowledge it, that you're just running on empty because you can, and you're used to like running, like it's like driving with a check engine light on basically. And yeah, I don't know. I just have strong feelings about it because I just feel like there's so many, like, you know, the older generations will say it's like the new generations are lazy and, you know, they don't want to work or all this kind of stuff, or that we're upset about everything. But I think it's just more like the insights we have about what life should be and could be, you know? Like, we should have time outside of our work. Like, we should be able to find a job that we enjoy because we spend so much time working, but like also have balance in your life, you know? So I think it's like, it's just a shift in like what really matters.
Yeah.
You know? And I think, yeah, I just think we're shifting away from like this idea that, you know, we have to be productive 100% of the time to enjoying the time that we have here.
Yeah, no, I think there's a benefit, obviously, and being able to enjoy and have good times with those that you care about, obviously. I'm not saying to work your butt off all day and to not have time for yourself. I'm not saying that at all. If anything, I think people, again, should have time for themselves. If they're single, if they're married, obviously, if kids, like once you have kids, it's a totally different, again, I don't have any kids, but I know that definitely things change.
We have a child.
Here we go again. But anyways.
She is our child.
She's a dog. We have to take care of her, obviously.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's an animal. There's responsibility of obviously, but it's not the same as a child. Wait, sorry, I just looked at your screen and I got distracted. What self-help preaches, meditation, cohost hours, working out, routine, hustle culture. Are these your notes or these?
Yeah, these were my notes.
Oh, I thought this was a article you were reading. Oh my gosh, no, definitely cold showers. I think do benefit. Working out, I think benefits obviously not only your body, but also it helps you. I feel like it.
But
helps you better,
so what I'm saying is that like I think the negative side of all of this comes with like the extremes of it all. Like I read a story too. Like this was not when I was researching this, but of a girl who like obsessively worked out, which to an extent is not good for you. You risk injuring yourself.
Oh no, like, of course, yeah.
You could get
overrunning.
To, you could get to like an unhealthy like weight of like losing a bunch of weight, which is also not good for you. So I think all of it comes with balance, which often I feel like they talk about in self-help books, but like really don't, because like you've got to find your own balance. Like if I try to do everything a self-help book preached to me, I would die.
No, of course. Again, there's there's all at the end of the day, this comes back to
it depends on your personal journey.
Your personal journey, what you want out of your life, or what you're looking to achieve in your life. For example, we had Rototech on, and she explained to us like how she learned how to code and all these different ways that you don't have to go to school for it. You can learn it on your own and by like paying for a program. And again, it's in a sense
but she didn't pay for a program.
No, I'm talking about like what they sell, like what their
what she sells.
Her coach, like she's a coach, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, like in a sense, she's offering to people a path to like improving themselves, to be a coder in a sense, right? If you want to get into the industry of learning how to like code.
Well, she's not teaching people how to code. She's teaching people how to get their foot in the door after learning how, like what projects they should do. But like, that's also like, so I can respect what she does though, because there's not a lot of resources out there for people. Like she was in a very unique situation where she didn't have a background in like coding, but knew that she didn't want to like stay in her current career path. And so she not only taught herself, did the right projects, but got her foot in the door at a huge company.
Yeah. That's legit. That's a big
without
deal.
all of that stuff that like other programs like boot camps will preach to you.
Yeah.
So she's like teaching people like, okay, well, these are the type of projects you should do for these kind of roles, and this is how your LinkedIn profile should look. So I think that's just a benefit, because that is something that like is almost like it's more repeatable than some of like these self-help things.
Yeah, I know.
It's like it's more likely like, yeah, because she did it, like this is what I did, and like I can help you because I like, not only is she might have connections to in the industry, so like and she does have a guarantee, like if you don't like it doesn't work. She's out there wanting to help people get that job, and if like it doesn't work for them, she's guaranteed more help.
And obviously she vets them and stuff like that.
Yeah,
it's not like anyone can enter.
So it's like in that scenario, like I support it, but in some of these self-help scenarios, they're just not like that. There's just because it's repeatable in some cases, it just might not be repeatable in your situation. So like, yeah, I mean, I guess I agree. It's just all dependent on like what you need and like at the time, and you just gotta be cautious, of what you're trying to implement in your life. Yeah. Because again, like if I try to like, for instance, I'm not into meditation. Like I think like sometimes like we focus so much on like the acts of doing these things that like it's more just, it becomes too routine to where it's not helpful. Like you're just going through the motions. Mm-hmm. Like for instance, like if you just started implementing all these things and you did them every day, but you weren't feeling anything, but it was just the motion of what you're going through, like you've got to rethink of like, what am I gonna like? What's gonna invigorate me? What's gonna motivate me? And like, yeah. So, I don't know. I just think that like as I was reading about it, I was like, yeah, I really agree with this, because I've just personally been in that boat too, where it's like, why does none of this work? Like, why isn't this like my life? I mentioned in the beginning of the podcast how we're running a marathon. There are several different ways to train for a marathon.
Oh, there's tons of different books, self-help books that you can read too as well. That's what I'm saying.
It goes down so many different avenues.
I have a one if you do want to run a marathon. Meb for Morals. It's a great book.
Okay,
about running.
But again, maybe that like what's it called? The like training schedule would not work.
Yeah, it might not work
because it depends on like what level one you are and like how like there's so many different factors that come into play, and I just think that's the whole thing too with this. There's just so many different factors, and some of them do capitalize on your pain. They capitalize on selling you a dream, because everyone has these dreams of like getting out of where they are and like doing something better. So yeah, that's my take. What are you thinking?
I think, again,
Cesar's argued against me this entire podcast.
No, I think
You say you agree with me on one thing.
No, I agree with you that there is certain levels of toxicity when it comes to the self-help industry. There are books that I haven't read. I just looked at the cover of them and I read the back of them, and I'm like, yeah, this is definitely not probably going to work for somebody. But again, it didn't work for me because I didn't buy the book. But then there's other books that I think could help people at least realize what's going on in their life, and not necessarily tell them exactly what they need to do. Like, it's just more of like, if you read this book, you'll be like, oh, like it's like a good way to evaluate yourself. And there's several books out there that take you along a journey and a story, usually about maybe one of the authors is like or is still like a practicing psychiatrist or a psychologist, a clinical psychologist or whatever the case is, and they tell you like certain things that's helped their hundreds and hundreds of different people that they've worked with, and that's what some of these, at least the books that I would recommend, go on and talk about certain things in that aspect, in that way. So again, I'd agree with you. There is like certain things, that maybe you shouldn't do. Maybe you should just, depending on your personal life journey, where are you at in life? I do highly recommend cold showers, though. I do. They're amazing.
I think those are overpopularized. I'll take my hot showers and feel
If once we get our house, I want to get one of those ice baths.
The plunges.
Those things are so. I did one when I ran my. I did 2 or 3 before I ran my half marathon because I was like preparing for it.
Well, just get an ice maker and you could do it in the bathtub.
That's that's all they are. It's just water and it's.
They use like steel tubs that people have like outside and they just fill it. Yeah. It's an interesting practice. I might do. There's people that do one like every day, like
after their workout or just in the morning.
I think I like saw a video on TikTok that was like the way your body reacts when you do those is like it thinks it's dying and then it realizes it's not. Yeah. Or something like that.
There's some science behind it. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. But one last note is like this whole conversation, like, well, the one just recently, what you were saying about like, kind of uncovering things about yourself. It reminded me of the Modern Family episode where they hire that person who has the book called like Junk Drawer.
Oh yeah.
And then he's like,
hilarious.
"Oh my gosh, all our junk is out," and she's leaving, and I'm just like, "Oh gosh." I feel like sometimes too, you might be felt like, okay, well, I realized that these problems in my life, but now I have no idea how to fix them. I've just identified them, and that's the worst feeling.
Identify it, yeah.
Yeah. So like identifying is the first part, but like that's only one part of it. You have to figure out how to fix it too. So, yeah, I think the moral of this whole conversation is that in some scenarios, self-help can be toxic in that like you're constantly reaching for like this end goal that's just never going to end because we always should be working and improving ourselves. But I think at the same time while you're working and improving yourself, you need to be doing it out of like the love that you have for yourself and not because you feel the need to improve based on what everyone else is saying, like it's because you have that inner desire to be better and not like the inner desire that I need to be better because someone else or like these books say I have to do this to be this kind of person, because at the end of the day you don't. Like, again, so many different roads to the same path. So you just got to be careful. You got to be careful with what you consume when it comes to self-help. You've got to definitely figure out what works for you and navigate it in a way that's going to be beneficial in your life. And that's a practice in itself. It requires a lot of self-awareness, requires a lot of dedication, a lot of time. And what works for someone else might not work for you. And it's okay. Like, our lives are all different. We're going to hit different milestones at different times.
Yeah.
So you've just got to be okay with that. And yeah, that's today's episode on the toxic self-help industry, which is ironic because Cesar and I want to make sure everyone that listens feels great about themselves is growing. But I think our podcast is more about like just talking about our experience, and again, I think we always preface by like, we're not experts. And also, our lives, not perfect. There's so many things Cesar and I still need to do. I'm constantly battling with myself, but it does feel good to like sit here and have conversations about it because I feel that it just opens our eyes to like other people's opinions, how Cesar doesn't agree with me on some things, which is okay.
No, of course. I mean, we don't all agree on the same things. In regards to like this, for example, we always find some sort of disagreement.
Well, I feel like Cesar finds a disagreement. He's like, but it's like you're like Oscar from The Office when he's like, actually, every single thing I said, I feel like if you clip this podcast, after I said something, Cesar was like, well, or not exactly, not really. What about in this case scenario? I'm like, can you disagree with me on one thing?
There's nuances to a lot of these things.
Oh, well, yeah, there's nuances, of course. There's nuances to everything.
It's not black and white when it comes to...
It's very gray.
Yeah.
It's very gray.
Yeah, very gray.
Gray, blurred lines.
Yeah.
Which is kind of often the hardest thing is like when everything's kind of blurry, like you've got to tread like a fine line. That has been the podcast today. We're so happy if you've made it to the end of this episode. We love doing this. We're going to continue doing this podcast. If you've made it this far, please like and subscribe. Leave a comment. Tell us what self-help books you hate. Which ones you love.
Or the ones you like.
This has been Growing Together with me, Sonny Vasquez.
And me, Cesar Santos.
We hope to see you again next week.
See you guys later.